What is up YouTube, and welcome to this Many Saints of Newark review. I was incredibly surprised when this movie was first announced as a prequel to The Sopranos, as I was kind of unsure. I thought, why would anyone want a prequel to The Sopranos? The show was perfect. It is my favourite TV show ever made. The Sopranos was a show about the Mafia in its last days, or kind of beyond the heyday. Of course, the Mafia are still a thing, but the late 90s saw major changes and declines for the Mafia, with John Gotti being put in prison due to the RICO Act, and the dominoes falling after that. The show followed Tony Soprano as he tried to deal with modern life and the declining power of the Mafia. He himself started going to therapy and thought to himself that, well, I got in at the wrong time. It was an insightful story and a world away from the Goodfellas and Godfather romanticising of the peak of the Mafia. I will admit that watching The Sopranos, I thought, boy, I'd love to see the heyday that Paulie and the guys talked about, but the prequel itself is set in pivotal times during societal upheaval and the decline of the influence of the Mafia, and during the race changes and the big uplift in social justice during the time of the Vietnam War. It's very much set during the time of the Chicago 7. It's not Vegas opulence or Godfather scale. The Mafia here are just slightly more powerful than the family we saw in The Sopranos. It's not the romantic prequel I was expecting, as I try not to watch trailers or read previews anymore, since my girlfriend did the same thing and enjoyed movies like Candyman much better, not knowing certain things. Instead, this is somewhat of a mirror of The Sopranos just 30 years earlier. Michael Gandolfini is following his father's late great footsteps, and while he looks uncanny as a young Anthony, Tony's even younger actor looked almost identical to his future son. Now, I expected a coming-of-age story, sort of like those scenes in Goodfellas where Ray Liotta is introduced to the family business. But no, this is not really his story. It's more about the man who led to him becoming who he was in the iconic HBO show. Having him being an eager recruit of the family business in hindsight would be a betrayal of the layered and heavy character, as we see him as a gifted child but a victim of his environment. No, this is the story of Christopher Moltisanti's father, Dickie Moltisanti. My main problem with the movie is that it does try to tell too much, and that the story of Dickie is somewhat similar to how we saw Tony Soprano portrayed over the many seasons of The Sopranos. It's like David Chase is trying to have an entire Sopranos season of storylines and plot in one single movie. We follow Dickie through his problems with his father, mistress, trying to have a child, Christopher, and also attempting to keep the family business running, while a former black friend is done dirty and tries to become a militant and wants to help his people in the face of the racist mafia and the huge uplift of kind of social justice that was happening in the 70s and the late 60s. All the while he's trying to mentor Tony Soprano, whose father is doing time. It's a lot, and the main friction between him and his former dirty work guy is absolutely tenuous and really hard to buy into when it's set up in the first half of the movie, just in the background. It never actually kind of properly is fully set up. They never really have a huge falling out, and there's not much reason behind their war that starts in the second act, and the war is, it's not really a war, it's more a final kind of exchange of blows. Still, what surprised me the most about the movie was how anyone can watch it. Of course, there's so many Easter eggs and references for fans of the show as we see Junior Soprano morph into the bitter old man we knew and hated. Vera Farmiga steals the show 1,000 times over as Livia Soprano, the bitter old crone from the show. Both her and John Bernthal are engrossing as Tony's firebrand parents and biggest influence on his life. The issue here is that, like I said, there's a lot going on, and much screen time is swallowed up by Dickie and his mistress. Admittedly, it does become dull and interesting with the rising gang threatening the Mafia, when the most interesting part of The Sopranos was the introductions and interactions between the capos and the made men of the DeMeo family. Instead, what is an afterthought is Michael Gandolfini's take on his father's legendary role, and I found myself looking forward to the next scene that featured the young soprano. I really loved the movie. It was essentially what felt like a 2-hour HBO special, and I think that had it had been a real proper mini-series, I think this would have been very, very good. But I do think it's pretty cool that if you aren't a fan of The Sopranos, as in if you haven't seen The Sopranos but you're like, hey, I like gangster movies, you can go and watch it. Now, I might do a Easter eggs and references video for this movie showing you the connections to the show and the changes, because there was a huge thing at the end which I thought was really, really interesting, and I won't spoil that for you here. It's out on October 1st on HBO Max, but it's out here in the UK. Before you comment saying, hey, it's not out yet. Yeah, I know, it's out in the UK. We get HBO Max movies a week early, but we have to see them in the cinema. We have no HBO Max. I don't know why. But that is it for this video, so please do drop a like down below. Do subscribe with notifications on, and I'll see you soon tomorrow for my Heels video. Have a safe day, and goodbye. Woke up this morning, yeah.